lot of people have tried to figure out what makes Bush's baked beans taste so darn good. Some think it's our specially cured bacon, our fine brown sugar, or our delicate blend of spices.
They're slow cooked according to our secret family recipe.
So the sauce is thicker and the flavor is richer.
Roll that beautiful bean footage.
Roll that beautiful bean footage. I've always wanted to say that on stage, so thank you for this opportunity. Jay will be very jealous. So a brand that has so much equity tied up into it, and a lot of love and loyalty and a lot of ownership of the category, we have all heard that phrase, roll that beautiful bean footage. Not all, but everybody in this room probably has heard it sometime or another. And depending on how old you are maybe, or where you're from, you may or may not associate it with Bush's, or you may or may not associate it with Jay Bush and his talking sidekick, Duke. We get a lot of, hey, that's the dog, or, you know, I know that guy, they call him Jake, not to be confused with Jake from State Farm, things like that. So we knew that, you know, roll that beautiful bean footage is so sacred and so important to the legacy of our brand, but we also saw that it was starting to mean different things as we were looking at younger consumers. And also as we looked at, as they were entering the category, how they were entering the category in the life stage they're entering. We still had a lot of love and brand equity and loyalty, but it was looking different than it was with our core audience. And so with that, we decided to go on a brand refresh journey, which honestly, coming from the agency side, where I worked on brands that had no choice but to iterate in some cases, whether it was in travel or other things in addition to CPG, this was a little bit different because we were taking something that was still beloved and we were really being proactive about it, because I give a lot of credit to the organization as a whole. We really believe in living in perpetuity and creating value for our consumers as much now as we do in 20 years. And so we wanted to look under the hood and see what is it that we could do to this brand, and how could we refresh the brand. And we said refresh because we wanted to take along the things that we loved about the brand. How could we bring it forward? And so with that, we started to kind of, you know, do some research. And I only have 15 minutes, so you have to believe me when I say we did tons of research and focus groups and surveys and all these things to really find out what might be driving these changes in our our trends that we were seeing over time. And some of it we were talking about, do people not understand how good beans are for them, or do they not like beans? The good news is we actually saw that they still did. They accepted that they were good for them, and they were like, yeah, I like beans. So it was interesting that the key insight was really they just forgot about us. We just were not top of mind, and as I like to say, we were kind of in the friend zone. We get invited to the party, right? We might be on the plate, but maybe we're not at the top of the list, or maybe we're not being thought of right away. Even when you think about, obviously we're talking about baked beans, but we're also big in the category in general. So black beans and taco night, it might be, it's a nice to have, but maybe it's not the same as like the cheese they have to have on top of the taco, right? And so we were maybe just not top of mind. And we felt like we really needed to do something to help inspire that usage and that kind of breakthrough that was going to get us, where we needed to be. And we were seeing that trend through with our brand as well. So, really thinking about, we were really still viewed as loved, maybe a little traditional, but as we looked at younger generations, perhaps that was changing a little bit, or different regions and things like that. So I'm going to talk about, all that being said, that's kind of why we did it, but I'm going to talk about what worked and maybe some things that we had to shift and learn on as we went through this process. And one thing that I'll say, I'll start with the good, that we really learned that starting with our long-range plan was the best thing we possibly could have done. We really created a North Star, and this is kind of a very high-level look at what that is, and it really isn't important what's on here. I think the important thing was that we all aligned of, if we wanted to create this breakthrough, if we wanted to hit on those usage occasions, if we wanted to expand as baked bean but beyond, what did we need to do there? And I think this is singularly maybe one of the most important things we did, because the version we use internally has not only what are the strategic shifts we want to make, but also how do we think we can do that, and what are the KPIs we'll look at for those various strategies that will tell us if we're successful or not. And I have it on my wall in my office. I put it in every brief that I've done. This has been over a 3 to 5 year period that we've been doing this. And when we have changes with staffing, when we have changes externally, it's really proved to be a real North Star for us, which has been really important, because even when external changes are happening, and it's easy to get distracted by, you know, the numbers that you're seeing coming out of, you know, receipt data, or as we talk about lower and upper funnel, it can get easy to get sidetracked. And I think this has always been one thing we've been able to come back together on. And we almost talk about as volume, turning up the volume. We might turn up the volume one place, but turn it down another place within this strategy. But we're really kind of married to moving forward to this together. And I think that's been kind of, if I had to say, the one thing that has really driven us, this has been the best thing I think we did in this experience. And then I think the other thing we did really well was figured out who are we and who do we want to continue to be authentically. Because again, we have good brand sentiment. We're proud of who we are. We're privately held. We've been privately held since 1908. And we felt it was really important to understand, you know, what is it that we want to carry forward, taking out the, you know, the kind of equity assets that we might have in market. Who are we and who can we be in the market truly and genuinely? And we wrap that up in something called bean goodness, because we're dedicated to the bean, and we're one of the few national companies that can say that. And so that was really at the heart of what we did. Now onto some things that we are learning from, or we continue to learn from, and we've had to test and learn on. One would be audience. I think, you know, at the beginning of this, we were thinking about what do we need to do? How do we need to do it? What does that audience look like? And we did a lot of work in terms of who is this audience and how are we going to reach them? And it was great, but it was very aspirational. And as we're living in the world we're living in, and as things continue to evolve on the side that we're just talking about, more in the media and elements, we've really had to figure out how to really look at audience segmentation in a much more robust way. And maybe we were very focused, and I think that was important and an important part of the journey to get to that branding and that tone. But in terms of how do we actually execute on the brand and the kind of process we were going through, we've had to continue to iterate and really find those ways to look at the various pieces. And you think about usage itself, there's a lot of different places and things people are doing with beans. Another one that I don't know that we could change it or do anything differently, but if anyone out there is going forward with, you know, legacy elements, I just encourage you to remember that you have to test and learn. We did so much work. These are such important assets to us. Jay, Duke, the can itself, roll that beautiful bean footage. These things are important to us. And so we did a lot of work. We talked to a lot of consumers about, you know, what is it, what's raised to the top? And I'm not giving anything away here when I say that the dog, obviously, was number one. And continues to be, no matter what. People love dogs, and they love our talking, mischievous dog. And we did a lot of work of like, okay, how should we, or how can we bring these forwards, and what things are too tied into this or that? And, you know, we made some choices, and I think we had to. But I think what we've learned along the way is that we are still figuring out, like, okay, some of these things, we want to continue to bring them in and evolve them, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So again, it's a learning, but it's more for, if anyone's out there, think of it as like a test and learn. Do your homework, figure it out, but then know that you're going to probably come back around to some of these things and figure out how they work in your new identity. So ultimately, we shifted from roll that beautiful bean footage to that beautiful bean company, because we really felt like it considered all of the things that we are as an organization and allowed us to go cross portfolio. And we really went full tilt with it. I mean, we had really beautiful coloring, and we went really food-centric. You'll see Duke did get to stand at the end there with a little wink and a nod. I think he was the one saying, roll that beautiful bean footage. We kept people like Jay's voiceovers and things. But you can see this looks fairly different than the first spots you saw at the top there. And we went big with our launch. I can't show it because I only have 15 minutes, but if you ever want to look it up, there is a great thing called Bean Song that we did with Josh Groban that was very Lonely Island-esque take on a remake of the Magical Fruit Song, because, you know, beans are fun. And it was just a way for us to kind of push out the, you know, the new brand assets and get people talking about it and get some attention and love to it and have some fun doing it, because that's still really core and important to who we are as a brand. And the good news is, with the audiences we were looking at and the things we were trying to do, it was good. We saw increases in some of the audiences we wanted to see. We did not hurt our brand equity scores. In fact, in some places we saw them go up, which is a hard task at our brand, honestly, which is a great problem to have. But there is no growth without discomfort, is what I like to say, and we talk a lot about internally, because along with those shifts, we saw some things soften that maybe we weren't really very excited about in certain parts of our portfolio. And I think we were trying to figure out, you know, how do we, you know, if we went full this way, how do we kind of make sure we're still answering all, you know, all of the audiences and parts of our portfolio that we have. And I think we really I think if I can encourage anything, it's to view everything as a learning agenda when you're going through this process. And that's hard, and it takes education with your senior leadership. But it's really about, how are we looking at this as what needs to have a long-term vision versus what will we just need to see if we need to optimize or pivot. And so with that, in our first, I would call it year or two, these probably should be more phases, but we really were in that kind of this space that we had updated. We brought our brand and refreshed it. But then as we saw what we were seeing across maybe our core audiences as well as our newer audiences and segmentation, we wanted to bring in some more of the things that we knew worked, because one of the things that we weren't seeing was maybe the creative breakthrough that we had been used to. We were really used to those Jay and Duke scores that we had seen in the past. And part of it is just time and introducing a new idea. But we also felt like we could bring in more of that joy and humor that we had in the past. And so with that, we brought in Peyton Manning as part of it. And he played that role, that like kind of banter role with Duke back and forth. But he did it in a way that was very much about usage occasions, was about different parts of our portfolio, different parts of your everyday occasions. And even in year 3 now, we're bringing Roll That Beautiful Bean footage back because it's the anniversary of Roll That Beautiful Bean footage. It's 30 years. But we've brought it into our new brand identity in a very different way than it was before, and it's cross-portfolio. And Jay even made a cameo with Peyton this year. And they were having some fun in the kitchen. So it's all in this new refreshed brand, but it's bringing in some of the things we know that a lot of our consumers want to see. And it's allowed us to modernize and not be tied to some of the things we had done in the past. But I can't stress enough is one of the things we've seen work really well for us through our marketing mix and through various other brand equity measures is that as important as those linear moments are and those big media funnel parts are, the always on has really paid off in spades for us. So thinking about our partnerships, for example, we were able to refresh our partnership strategy to really find those places that our core audience and our audiences that we find as our kind of our aspirational audiences overlap, like college sports, like National Parks Foundation. Social, we look at it as much more of a not social media as a whole, but really thinking about the different channels and how do we use them. And we built out TikTok, and it's now our second biggest channel, for example, which is very different than where we were. And earned media, I want to give a shout out because I think it's a great way that we've been able to, as we talked about the trade-offs and doing more channels, more things, more opportunities. Earned is a great way that we've been able to scale and reach more people with our messaging while still really working on those media strategies that we need to work on. And last but not least, our merch. I just got a photo actually from someone who is all decked out for prom in their Bush's Beans merch. They had a tie and the bucket hat and everything. And so we're seeing it as like almost a self-sustaining marketing channel, which has been really exciting and really brought in our younger consumers in a different way. So what's working? We've really seen, we have seen that household penetration, and we've seen those brand equity scores go up and increased our marketing efficiency and effectiveness. Now, I can't take full credit for that. We have a precision marketing team as well that has worked very hard on this. But we're still working on a lot of things. I think I encourage everyone, if anyone's going through this process right now, is we're talking a lot about what is long-term versus short-term, and how do we make sure we're, making the right pivots at the right times with the right reasons. And continuing to do the good work on things that maybe aren't as exciting in terms of the usage occasions, and that kind of falls within your lower funnel efforts and optimizing our audience and our channel mixes to bring it down funnel more effectively. That's it.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for using your own. Thank you for using the fonts from the campaign as part of the presentation, which I thought was really cool. Questions for Kate?
Hi, I'm Kevin from the Gurulosity Brand Management Institute, and my question is about the upfront. You explained a little bit about why you embarked upon this change, and I'm curious at the leadership levels of the company how that kind of went over and what those conversations were like. A lot of times when you're looking at revamping a brand, some people might not want you to do that, or they may be afraid of alienating traditional audiences and things like that. So I'm curious how those conversations went, and if you ran into any friction, how you handled that.
Yeah, we are very fortunate, I think, in that we were very much aligned in general, that this was a direction we wanted to go. But I will say the elements of actually where we wanted to go was where they probably took the most effort to kind of make sure we were all feeling comfortable. And that's where I was talking about, you have to trust me, that we did tons of research and we put everything, we do a lot with Ipsos and we do a lot with, surveys, custom surveys and things like that before we went along. And there was a lot of, showing the work of how we got to we looked at risk and we looked at risk assessment and we looked at what we felt would happen in the positive and what it could look like in the other direction as well. So I think that was part of bringing it along. But I do think those long range goals that we talked about were really extremely helpful in knowing that this is what we're all aligned to. And then in the next steps, it was really about kind of bringing people along and showing them kind of that we had done the homework to show. And nothing's set in stone, of course, but I think that was a big part of it, is we left a lot of time for learning agendas.
And Kate, just to circle us back to earlier discussions about celebrity, because we're seeing some radical new uses of celebrity in Cardi B and Carrie Underwood. And I'm guessing that Peyton Manning doesn't own a piece of Bush's now in return for this. So we are talking about something a little bit more traditional in terms of endorsement, and yet his level of involvement and the nature of his use was different. So you could talk a little bit about how you came at using Peyton Manning here and what you think you got out of this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think overall we have tried to use, because we work with Peyton, but we also work with Brian Baumgartner from The Office, and we worked with other talent in general. Brian Baumgartner is more focused on the chili side of our business, for example. So Kevin from The Office spilled some chili famously. I don't know if you know that. So we wanted to use him for that. And I think what we've really focused on is finding the right talent for what that fits authentically in what we're trying to do. And I hate to overuse that word because I know it's one that the brand side of the house loves to use. But I think, we had just kind of come into our SEC partnership, which was a new kind of college experience for us. We were in NASCAR before that. And I think it was important to us. And he's also a Knoxville, he's big in Knoxville. He played for UT, obviously. I'm sure you guys know that. And so it was important for us to find somebody that we felt really fit who we are as a brand. Because when we think about Jay, he's part of our family. And he represents the company. And we wouldn't want anyone who didn't do that. But also that could feel like they could have a kind of a broad appeal. So I think that's how we've operated, is pulling him in the ways that make sense to how we've been shifting.
But you were thinking, I think what was interesting is you were thinking of them as talent, as part of the entertainment, because part of this refresh was an entertainment refresh.
Yeah.
And you were using them to play as actors within the drama.
Yeah.
Or within the comedy.
Yeah.
Kate Rafferty, thank you so much for coming out and doing that.